Hi, this is Bruce Rawles, and I'm speaking today with Susan Dugan. And today we thought we'd talk about, per Susan's excellent suggestion, Course in Miracles Workbook Lesson number 330, which is I Will Not Hurt Myself Again Today. And it seems very appropriate given world events, and but that's true always. Maybe it's just that we have examples sometimes that are particularly is poignant the right word, or appropriate, or we're
Well,
recording this on inauguration today.
attractive, okay?
Attractive?
Maybe
Yeah.
attractive, we're not aware of how attractive they are, but they're quite attractive, yeah.
We're certainly drawn to the drama, aren't we? Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. So anyway, would you like to introduce us to this workbook lesson, Susan, and
Sure,
kind of
sure. Well,
guide us through some of this?
yeah, and I guess it's the whole theme of this that I will not hurt myself again today. It's actually one of a favorite lesson of mine because I like to hurt myself, I mean, we all do. And I mean, that's what we're learning as course students, that, despite how it feels and despite how real the dream seems and all of the many manifestations that we seem to be experiencing of the tiny thought of separation, the tiny mad idea that we could be separate from our source, and that it really happened and now we exist at God's expense, but it's not our fault. It's all of these perpetrators out there. Despite that, and it's them. I mean, that's what I meant by being deeply attracted. We're deeply, on an unconscious level, attracted to that. And it's really easy for us as course students to completely forget that, to become so swept up in the dream and our personal dream. And if you've lived for any amount of time too, it does seem like the problems, in my personal life mount up, the problems my body faces mount up, the problems my family faces, as we age, and as, that those are our parents, if we still have them, are perhaps going through. I know mine have had some major deterioration, and I know yours too, in the last few years, and this year in particular, there were more downturns in that, and that seemed very challenging, and I had personal health problems, and I had, there's just on and on. There's all kinds of issues that we have, and there's still that matter. What I was noticing in myself as last year came to a close and the new year started, was just how deeply, sort of mired I allowed myself again to become in this. And, there was a lot of popular talk at the end of last year about how 2016 was the worst freaking year ever. And, there was comedians that did a very funny job of making that point. And I was in it, I was way in it. But not just on a collective level, but also personally. I was really missing my daughter again, and I felt hopeless about, she was home for Christmas, and a couple days before she even left, I was like missing her again and despairing. And, so I finally reached a point that, I've gone to the dark side. I really have to stop this,
Right.
And that lesson came to mind. And then, of course, 2 weeks into the new year, as I was shoveling snow, I wrote something I posted on my blog.
I read that and enjoyed that this morning.
But, it was all these things I'm mentioning. And then, there it is, just a couple weeks in, after vowing to stop with the baby business, as Ken, said, that, we need to grow up with this course and stop insisting that the problem is out there, and at least be willing to entertain the possibility that it's not, so in catching myself do that again, and that's, that lesson came to mind again, I guess. And so we really are asked to at least entertain the possibility that we're wrong about what's going on. We're wrong about what's in our best interest. We're wrong about the divisions that we see. We're wrong about the losses that we fear and experience. As course students, the only reason we're here is to learn that we're not, and to learn that this that suffering is optional. Nothing outside our mind has the power to take our peace today, and or peace away today or at any moment. And if we are experiencing a lack of peace, it's because on some level we want to experience it. We are all trying to experience ourselves as victims so that we can feel less guilty than others. And everybody here is walking around with that same agenda. How they see that salvation, who they see as the bad guys and the good guys, may be different from our point of view, but the content is the same. And we all share the same need to learn that we're wrong. And,
right.
And that's not going to be found by drawing more lines in the sand. It's just not, And so anyway, that's just the theme I think we're talking about. And it happens to be on Inauguration Day that we're recording this. That was just coincidental, but, great time for us to look at that on a collective level and to see, those of us who were not Donald Trump supporters may feel, all kinds of emotions about this, and very, very threatened and very, very terrified, or whatever the emotions are, while those of us who, feel that Donald Trump was our salvation in some way, that we were victimized and now we're being redeemed from the rhetoric of that side, then, that's just as much of a mistake, but also just as legitimate within the dream.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming from the same thought of separation that I make real within me, and it's in all of our best interest to learn that we're wrong about that, and because it's hurting us.
Right. And that circus that the ego maintains, may have different players that come and go. Because I was thinking, gee, 8 years ago we had
we were on the other side of this.
And then what about 12 and
right.
16 years ago? And then I'm thinking, well, it's not only is it cyclical, but it's part of the strategy to always keep the furniture being rearranged, the stage props changing, but it's the same circus. And I had this kind of amusing realization that a few days ago I was watching a program was talking literally about circuses, and Barnum and Bailey's circus apparently after 100 some odd years is finally shut down. And I was thinking, well, the old PT, as in Barnum, may not be around, but today we have a new PT as President Trump.
Right.
So, but it's the same drama. It's the same way of distracting us. It's the same magic act that really is just smoke and mirrors that we like you say, we're seduced by, we're attracted to, we're drawn to, because that's the ego's strategy of keeping us mindless and always fixated on the outer screen of our mind, our projected screen, instead of reeling in the projections and seeing that from that outer shield of oblivion, as one of the workbook lessons describes it, we can realize that it's the unconscious guilt that is unfounded, but we never see it's unfounded unless we reel it in, use the specifics, and use that classroom with the Holy Spirit's guidance, with our inner kindness teacher at the helm, and gently but firmly reeling it in, saying, okay, take a look at this and realize this is just an incredibly elaborate, dramatic production, and has had no effect whatsoever on our reality that we all share, and that has the same innocence for all the players, including those in Washington, D.C. and any other part of the planet, any other part of the cosmos. And any other seeming time or space, it's all the same massive hologram.
Right. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, a few weeks ago, you mentioned having an epiphany about that, and I think you touched on it in your blog post too. And I think that kind of ties into recognizing that it's a dream, if I understood it correctly. But maybe you could elaborate on that.
Right. Well, epiphanies come and go.
Yeah, of course.
I'll see if I can sort of elaborate on what I was thinking, but it really was back to that. It always comes in the form of seeing our sameness, and so what I really described in the blog was really, feeling very, very out of touch with our inner teacher, which I imagine as the figure of Jesus, and the Course uses as a symbol of the right mind, but you can use any symbol that you want. But so in the form that it came for me was really that, you know, recognition that you know, being in touch with our inner teacher doesn't necessarily mean that we're feeling good all the time. It doesn't mean that we're not, you know, experiencing conflict. It means that we are looking at it with him, and you know, we are bringing it to him. It doesn't, you know, we're in school, and so, you know, what I recognized was that the recognition that I have, how attracted I was to wanting to feel victimized again, is what kind of came to me. And in that recognition, I realized that I had been really looking with Jesus, because that's the recognition that we're being asked to have. You know, that means that we've seen it from his point of view. That's what he's telling us, that, you know, we but do this to ourselves, and we don't have to. You know, there isn't, and behind that is always, for me, the recognition of our sameness, and that is always a understanding in some way that you know, again, that really the only interest that we can share as bodies is to find our way home to the mind. You know, that everybody here is walking around with that same crushing sense of guilt. And so despite the fact that it looks like we're so different in form, you know, it looks like this is hateful and this isn't hateful. They're hateful and I'm not hateful.
The we and the they.
Yeah, it's always the us and them of the ego thought system. But I must be wrong about that. And, you know, today I was driving around. I hadn't intended to listen to the inaugural speech because I was sort of avoiding it, but it was on to NPR, and so I was listening to it, and I thought, okay, I want to listen to this and hear what, with compassion, you know, and hear what the appeal is. And you know, I recognized, I mean, the appeal was the same thing that I had been experiencing, that it's appealing to that idea that I'm unfairly treated. And it's also appealing to this fairy tale that you know, the world can solve my problems. Right. That now that I have a you know, for the people that were listening, and this was most directed to, that this change will help me. I feel powerless, and this change will help me feel powerful again. And, you know, I can find salvation here. I can be redeemed. I can have the world as it was years ago, and you know, I can have the manufacturing jobs back, and I can have the industrial age great again, and all of those kinds of things that people feel a sense of grief and loss about. You know, that's understandable, and it's understandable why that would be appealing, but it's a fairy tale. And it's no different really than the fairy tales that we all tell ourselves about what will make us, what will help us, what will bring us peace, what will bring us jobs, what will bring us, you know, what will bring us, fill that lack that we all feel, and make us feel secure again. And, you know, there's nothing out there that's going to make us feel secure ever. And that's a fairy tale, you know, it's a lie. And so what we really are the same. I mean, we really share that same need to learn that salvation is not out there. It's not, you know, it's within us. And it will always come in the form of us recognizing our sameness over our differences. Not the differences in form, but the sameness in content. Mm-hmm. The differences in form we made up to, you know, to divide us, to keep us divided from God, and to keep that illusion that the guilt over separation is real. And we're all craving that. We're all craving to find, you know, somebody that we can hold responsible for that. We share that as human beings. That's, you know, that's very common to us. And so it's not really difficult to have compassion for people that, you know, are identifying with this figure, because we identify with figures too that we think can save us. And we all feel threatened, mm-hmm. you know, and we're all wrong. We're all believing in fairy tales.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what you're saying reminds me of one of Ken Wapnick's maxims, that it just makes it so simple, is that we all have two thought systems: an ego, which is always consistently 100% insane all the time. That's the pathological liar that we all, have identified with, and we all have the 100% sane thought system that speaks to us gently, seemingly quietly at times, but always consistently present, if we're willing to look for it, of the peace that cannot be shaken by any circumstance or any condition. And we have the decision-making faculty that chooses between those moment to moment. And in that, we are all the same. We are all completely identical. Like you say, not on the level of form, because obviously the differences that our senses bring back to us, that we taught them to and programmed them to bring back to us, show myriad and diverse differences and tremendous conflict on the level of form.
right.
But if we can go beyond that, get above the battleground of appearances, we see that the pathological lies don't hold up under the light that our inner kindness teacher shines on it, that shows that we're all, like you say, we're all in the same boat. We're all
We're all
looking for the
pathological
same
liars.
peace that's consistent. At least that sane part of us is all looking for that. The insane part of us that we haven't quite given up on, because we think we're going to get some kind of mileage or payback or payoff from it, is, like you were talking about just moments ago, that the crazy notion that somehow we're going to pull off this dream thing and make the ego's world great again.
Right, right.
But it never, not that it ever was, but
It never works. It never works. It never has.
yeah,
And it is that attraction to. We also are, what holds the idea of me together is my suffering. We're
right.
all attracted to suffering. We're all attracted to the idea of victims and victimizers. We trade places with that idea all the time, because we feel victimized and then we feel justified in victimizing. And, none of it ever relieves our suffering. So it's maladaptive. It's a maladaptive solution to a non-existent problem, as Ken always said,
Exactly. As you're saying that, I just kind of flashed on, if we were to subtract all the media that doesn't rhapsodize and glamorize and glorify victimhood, how much media would be left? It might be pretty slim pickings.
Right. Or
in terms of what's left over that really doesn't glorify and make victimhood the pinnacle of the ideal of that we try to strive for. Is if we can show that we're unfairly treated at the hands of some other or others, then we've pulled off the maladaptive solution.
Right, exactly. And I mean, the thing is that, the course is always practical. It's not, until we know that we're not personal selves, it's not asking us to deny our bodies or the world. And it doesn't mean, none of what we're saying means that you shouldn't, the people that are Trump supporters shouldn't go to the inauguration and celebrate it, that people who are not shouldn't walk, do the women's march or protest if they so desire. But if our identity is, if we care about the outcome of it, if we become invested in I was actually supposed to march with someone, a good friend, in the women's march, and I had been years ago quite active in women's issues, and I felt that was a positive thing. But it's a positive thing, and she ended up being sick, and so I'm asking a couple more friends, and so we'll see. I will or I won't. It's not, but it's got to not be the big deal.
Right.
If our identity is invested in it, if I feel so, I'm going to be really unhappy if I don't go, or really elated if I do. That shows us where we're placing our identity. And the truth is, so we can participate and do the normal thing, but it's always about what purpose we're giving it. If the purpose is to learn our sameness, then it's fine, and it doesn't matter, because we have, but that means that we have to be really paying attention and looking with our inner teacher and looking at where we're placing our our identity. That takes a lot of work, actually. That's an exercise that is difficult for us as course students, and we really have to set our intention and pay attention to our thoughts and our judgments that come up, and where we're placing our whether or not we're using it to further the interests of the ego thought system of one or the other, or whether we're using it to simply learn that we're wrong about that. And we can use anything that we're doing in the world to learn that we're wrong. And we have a great classroom right now in which to learn that we're wrong, because of the flamboyant nature of Donald Trump. It seems larger than, he seems such a larger than life sort of figure, and a larger than life ego, as if his ego is somehow worse than our egos, but that's a lie. And we need to really see that the only mind in need of healing is always and only my ego, my mind on ego, my mind, decision-making mind that's choosing to identify with the ego and what purpose I'm giving it. And that's a moment-to-moment realignment that we can make. And we're denying the power of our mind when we say we can't make that,
That's true. That's true. We're basically, like the early part of the text suggests, we'd be denying the most fundamental law that is the law of cause and effect, which is basically saying that if we, discredit the power of our mind to make up a dysfunctional maladaptive dream, that also means that we're discrediting and dissing the power of our mind to choose against that dream.
Right.
And that's, I think, that the crux of that aha moment that we can all have, whenever we choose. And like you say, it does take a lot of practice and a lot of vigilance to notice it more and more. But I think what helps tremendously is the fact that it's painful to indulge in the resistance over an extended period of time. And the more we pay attention to it, the more I think it doesn't necessarily become easier. It just becomes a habit that we can gently ease into, maybe more readily. At least that's kind of been my perception. It's like it's never easy to as long as we're identified with our egos, to admit that we've been wrong about our perceptions of everything. But we can start to recognize that if I'm not at peace, I must have chosen wrongly.
And that's all we have to recognize.
Yeah.
That's absolutely it. If I'm not at peace, I'm just going to close these blinds a little bit.
Okay, sure.
The sun is streaming in and it's kind of right in my eyes.
Okay.
Always want to get rid of that light, you know what I mean? Just kidding. So, but yeah, the idea, all we have to know is that that it's hurting me. And that, what I was thinking about too is being in touch with Jesus and being in school. It doesn't mean that we're ready to let it go necessarily.
Right.
It doesn't mean we are. It's okay if we're not, but we need to own that we're not. The reason that I'm suffering right now is because I'm not willing to let this go right now. No other reason. I have to deny that there could be any other reason. And that's a lot. That's a lot for us. We want to be right. We want to dig in our heels and say, the cause is you, the cause is him, the cause is them. And we're wrong about that. And conversely, just as I was saying, if we're using the election as an example, we want to say that my salvation is because of them. Or when I use my daughter, I'm happy when she's home, but now she's leaving me again and I can't be happy. That's ridiculous. That's just like such a guilt trip, I don't say that to her, but even that I'm experiencing it on an energetic level is sort of a guilt trip, So that's not loving. And so that's not the lesson I want to teach and learn. I want to teach and learn that I'm, independent of anything that happens, we are loved.
Right.
We're loved. That's not change. It can't change,
Yeah. And I think you nailed it earlier, when you talked about the shared interest, because if we can remember that everyone has that same dichotomy, the same dilemma, the same struggle between those two thought systems, and have compassion for everyone, regardless of political affiliation or gender or cultural background or any polarizing, seeming difference,
Yeah.
that basically unifies us and gives us an opportunity to ease into a frame of mind where we can, without condemnation, ego's tendency to want to stay mired in that, and kind of catch it in mid thought and say, oh, I was identified with this, but I'm seeing where that identification wasn't serving me, and now I can choose against that identity. Not in any kind of a violent way, because that's basically just using the ego strategy to reinforce itself, but just to sort of just gently pull the plug on a little bit of that identification at a time, and eventually, I think that's sort of my in my imagination how you get close to what the Course describes as God taking the final steps is we just basically have gotten to the point where the ego is still it's 100% insane self all along, but we've just gradually decreased our identification with it and our willingness to condemn our mind for having believed that we chose that. And at some point, it'll just be, oh, I guess I've drained the swamp, so to speak.
And that's so important, what you were just saying, because it's really that not judging ourselves. Again, it's being in school, Jesus isn't judging us. And so when we catch ourselves doing this, it's not about saying, oh, like, how many years have I been doing this? And I'm such a bonehead. And I mean, all the things that we may tell ourselves, but that, I really must be afraid of this.
Yeah.
It's coming from fear. So there's no need whatsoever to judge myself, but it's hurting me. So I don't have to keep hurting myself. I mean, I keep banging my head against the wall if I want to.
That was the gesture I was just suggesting.
And I mean, a lot of the time, I'd rather bang my head against the wall.
Yeah,
I'd rather, turn on the comedians and watch them nail somebody, and feel like just, even if it's like it's just very, very funny. It's not really kind, there's nothing wrong with watching it, but let's be aware of why we're watching it,
Right.
So again, what we really want to learn is, and what will really bring us ultimately a sense of innocence and a sense of being loved and loving, which is really underneath all of this, what everybody here wants more than anything, is to take the small steps that Jesus is asking, to at least own that this is what I'm doing, and to entertain, and ask myself, well, I can keep doing this, but do I really want to hurt myself again right now in this thought, in this next thing I'm about to say, in what I'm about to identify with right now on the news? And I mean, how do I really want to see this? Can I see this as my ego and my call for love? And that's what we're challenged to do. And if you don't, this course is not for everybody. I mean, this is very difficult work. But if that is not something that you're willing to do, then maybe a different spiritual path might work better,
Yeah.
Because this path is through relationship. And if we're gonna do it, you and I have talked a lot in our little chats about resistance, but at least recognize it for what it is. Right. And this is my fear of love I'm looking at, and it's not a crime, but it is fear, and it is my unwillingness is coming from a very, very frightened and empty space that I am identifying with. And I don't have to keep doing it, and I will feel better when I'm ready to let this go.
Yep. Yeah, it seems like we're all I think the beauty of the course is that it gives us a very gentle way of recognizing that we're all recovering masochists, and this workbook lesson that you've selected is points that out very clearly.
Right.
We have a choice. We can choose to not hurt ourselves, just moment to moment, not just maybe just today. Well, maybe even just a little bit today.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I had also, when I posted this blog post, included something from the Hero of the Dream that I think is so relevant also to the same theme and same discussion, and that Ken quoted all the time. So I wanted to read a little bit of that.
Please do. Yes.
So this is from chapter 27, and what are we? Section 8, paragraphs 10 through 12. I don't know that I'll read the whole thing, but the often quoted first paragraph 10 that Ken refer to again and again is, the secret of salvation is but this, that you are doing this unto yourself. No matter what the form of the attack, this still is true. Whoever takes the role of enemy and attacker, still is this the truth. Whatever seems to be the cause of any pain and suffering you feel, this is still true. For you could not react at all to figures in a dream you knew that you were dreaming. Let them be as hateful and as vicious as they may, they could have no effect on you unless you fail to recognize it is your dream. So, I also, in this blog post, and part of that epiphany I was talking about was if these things are in my dream, it's because I wanted them there. I don't need to be in touch with how that works outside, the decision-making mind, choosing the script and all of that Ken talked about. That's all very useful and to review, but in the moment, all I need to know is if I'm feeling unfairly treated, if I'm reacting to the people and the problems that I see out there, it's because I'm dreaming them. And I want it, which must mean that I wanted them there. So it means that I'm invested in being a victim, and there's no other reason, And I just want to read one more, a little more of this. This single lesson learned will set you free from suffering, whatever form it takes. The Holy Spirit will repeat this one inclusive lesson of deliverance until it has been learned, regardless of the form of suffering that brings you pain. Whatever hurt you bring to him, he will make answer with this very simple truth. For this one answer takes away the cause of every form of sorrow and of pain. So it's bringing that, all we're asked to do is to say, how do you see this? And he's always telling us, brother, but do this to yourself, and there's no other reason. So you could keep hurting yourself, and I won't judge you, but you can stop anytime you want.
The wall won't mind if you stop banging your head on it, right?
You will feel better if you let it go. And so, and if you want to read the rest of it, maybe.
Sure. I'll just pick up where you left off.
Yeah.
For this one answer takes away the cause of every form of sorrow and of pain. The form affects his answer not at all, for he would teach you but the single cause of all of them, no matter what their form. And you will understand that miracles reflect the simple statement, I have done this thing, and it is this I would undo. And boy, the undo is such a powerful idea, and ties into one of my favorite two-word phrases from Ken Wapnick that I think really epitomizes the Course. He says, it's not a course in yes, it's a course in not no.
Right.
It's basically saying I can choose any given moment to not be invested in the outcome. I can choose to not condemn myself, to not beat my head against the metaphoric wall of the ego's division that's imaginary, because there's no wall, nothing's been divided, because perfect oneness has never been shattered or divided or walled off. There's no walled off salad even.
That's right. Yeah. And really, I have done this thing, and it is this I would undo. I think of that as I would have you help me undo, because we can't really do it by ourselves.
Right, exactly.
We don't know we did it. We really don't know anything. We just have to be aware that we're wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those lucid moments that we can recognize more and more with practice, that when we start feeling a little tilt, a little discomfort of any kind, that's the clue to go within our mind and see.
Yeah.
What's that?
We can nip it in the bud if we want to, right?
If we want to, yeah.
but very often, you know, like I was noticing in myself, we don't. We just let it, we just kind of, you know, we completely forget what we're doing. You know, we become very, very mindless again. And that was a choice too, you know, and we deny that it was a choice, and it's not true. That's all. So you want to read the rest of it? It's a good way to.
Sure. Bring then all forms of suffering to him who knows that everyone is like the rest. He sees no differences where none exists, and he will teach you how each one is caused. None has a different cause from all the rest, and all of them are easily undone by but a single lesson truly learned. Salvation is a secret you have kept but from yourself. The universe proclaims it so. Yet to its witnesses you pay no heed at all, for they attest the thing you do not want to know. Sounds like resistance to me. They seem to keep it secret from you, yet you but need learn you chose but not to listen, not to see. Right. So the not know course, the not know curriculum is that Kim is such an eloquent teacher for, and our inner kindness teacher that we all have 24/7, 365, is the curriculum of seeing, and you know, denying the denial of seeing, denying the denial of.
Yeah, because everything that we see as bodies is a block to our awareness of love's presence, which is uninterrupted and, you know, not undifferentiated.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the seeing and the hearing that this last sentence is talking about, as again, Ken, such great reminders that I have these little, you know, maxims that every time I open the book, if I can remember what he said, is like, this is always and only about the mind.
Right.
And if I remember that, it's not the seeing of you know, the photons that hit my retina or the sound waves that hit my eardrum.
Right.
Nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with the level of form. It's always the interpretation. It's always the meaning that I've given it, like the early workbook lessons remind us, that is really the whole heart of what the course is getting at, and doesn't include anything but that. It's really only about the mind and what we metaphorically see as our identity, and what we hear as our you know, our internal community of thoughts that really make up that identity.
Right, and he always said purpose, 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 right? You know, I mean, what purpose? So once we notice that, what purpose do we want to give it right now? You know, and we have two purposes. We can use it to root ourselves more deeply in the dream, or we can use it right now to change our mind, to change our teacher, which will be a step toward awakening from the dream, you know? And that's all. I mean, it's really just that little shift, that little willingness to see it differently, you know, to see that we're wrong. And again, it might not be that we're, you know, we experience some kind of big, you know, sudden blissfulness about this. It's probably won't. It's just a quiet recognition that we're wrong, and that we really don't want to keep doing this right now, you know. That's what's really all it takes. I'm hurting myself in doing this, and I don't have to. I could see peace. You know, lesson 34, I could see peace instead of this. But it requires lesson 5. I'm not, you know, I'm wrong about what I'm upset about. That's not the cause, you know.
And yet we so often ascribe the cause to what's really a feedback of the mind, and we think that what comes back to us is the cause. And it's happening, you know, to us, but it's really happening by us. And I really have to.
It's a constant denying the responsibility and the power of the mind to choose, you know. Yeah, and that's all it is. It's not a sin. It's not a, you know, it's nothing. It's nothing, and that's what we don't like so much, because then then what am I?
What do you mean this whole identity that I've engaged in is silly?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So we're learning, we're in school, but we can learn from moment to moment not to keep hurting ourselves again today. And we have a choice, you know. It is within our power to choose. And, you know, we're going to have to remind ourselves of that, because we're upping. The ego always ups the ante, doesn't it? You know, always tries to make the figures in our dream, we're always choosing to make them bigger and scarier, and and more threatening and more, more unforgivable, right? I mean, that's the hierarchy of illusions that the laws of chaos talks about, but the Course in Miracles opens the text opens with the line, "There is no order of difficulty in miracles." There is nothing that we can't apply this to. That's a lie. There is no one we can't apply this to. That's a lie. And so that's that we have to deny the denial of truth constantly that you were talking about,
As you're saying that, let's say again.
If you break it down into just right now, it's really not as hard as it sounds.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Moment to moment, it's not difficult. If we think that we have to handle the whole curriculum at once, of course it would be.
That's the ego getting involved. Yeah.
One thought something you just said kind of triggered a thought that's like, well, it's the Course actually has, and it ties into that first principle of no order of difficulty miracles, is that the Course really provides us systematically with a way of developing a completely inclusive context where we can see that, for example, let's just pull a number out of the hat, 16 years ago, it's really no different.
Right.
Or whatever, you could pick any arbitrary point in time and space and recognize that,
or 2,000 years ago, or 800,000 years ago, or
exactly. It could have been a saber-toothed tiger or Tyrannosaurus Rex chasing us. It doesn't matter. It's the same fear paradigm that we keep thinking that there's going to be some solution within that, but our inner knowingness that we all have and all share gently reminds us that we've just dreamt it, and the dream really can be undone by our slow and consistent disidentification with it through very gentle forgiveness practice. And
Jesus as our teacher is just really, getting us to look so that we'll see that it's just never going to work. We're always going to cause suffering if we're looking to the world for anything.
Right. And it's not a bitter cynicism. It's just a gentle recognition that strategy isn't going to work, huh?
Right. It's actually the key to happiness. It's actually,
It's
actually the key to filling that lack, to realizing that we are whole, we are loved and loving, and that's never changed, and it's not absent in anyone. I mean, but if I'm seeing it as absent in anyone, I first must have seen it as absent in myself, and so I'll never find happiness until I'm willing to change my mind about that.
Exactly. Earlier today, I flashed on another favorite quote that on the surface seems sort of pessimistic from the Course, and that is the one of, if this were the real world, God would be cruel. And on the surface, as egos, I mean, boy, it seems like a really downer kind of thing. But what the Course is suggesting is that if we consistently forgive and find the shared interest and look for opportunities to see things from that inner kindness teacher's perspective, we will gradually see that beyond the special love and the special hate is the real love, like you say, that we keep wanting to push away because we're so afraid of that, because it is so powerful and it is such a tremendous unifying awareness that basically the whole ego structure dissolves on contact with that, and so we don't want to go anywhere near that.
And we're invulnerable at that point. We're completely, we recognize that we're completely invulnerable. And so we have no need to have villains in our dream.
Right.
We have no need to see anything but common interests.
Exactly. So basically the real world is our destiny and our heritage, everyone's destiny and heritage.
Right, and it's not the world we see. It's not the real world that the ego talks about, get real in the real world. No, it's not that world. That's the world we made up.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, well, I think that's probably a good place to stop.
I think so too. I think we didn't actually read those two paragraphs in lesson 330, but anybody can look that up, and I'll post the link.
Should we do that as a closing, maybe?
Oh, sure. Why don't we then? Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, we don't have to comment on it, but that might be a nice way to, because there's always a nice prayer. How about if I read the first paragraph and then you read the prayer? Is that good?
Sure. That sounds fine.
Let us this day accept forgiveness as our only function. Why should we attack our minds and give them images of pain? Why should we teach them they are powerless when God holds out his power and his love and bids them take what is already theirs? The mind that is made willing to accept God's gifts has been restored to spirit and extends its freedom and its joy, as is the will of God united with its own. The self which God created cannot sin and therefore cannot suffer. Let us choose today that he be our identity and thus escape forever from all things the dream of fear appears to offer us.
Father, your Son cannot be hurt. And if we think we suffer, we but fail to know our one identity we share with you. We would return to it today to be made free forever from all our mistakes and to be saved from what we thought we were.
Great.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a nice way to end. So
yeah. Thank you so much, Susan. And it's always a helpful reminder to me to have these conversations, and because I hear things that I need to practice more and find helpful, and
we learn from each other. It's great.
Yeah. So very much appreciate that. You can read more of Susan's wonderful musings on her blog, foraisenforgiveness.com, and I've got a website, acimblog.com, that also has other articles and things like that as well. And that's where you can reach us as well. And until next time, thank you again, Susan, and have a wonderful new year too.
Thanks. You too.
Okay. Bye for now.